and welcome to this episode of Everyday Enchantment. I am your host, Stacey Andon, and I am bringing on Kelly Backert because she's going to be a regular on Everyday Enchantment. We have a lot to say. This episode actually got sparked by a post that I made on Facebook, so I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But the theme is body shaming. And I don't know if it's the summer. It doesn't have to just be the summertime. I mean, but I've been body shamed my whole life in every season. But I think this time of year we get even more sensitive to it because there's a lot of rules about what we're supposed to do with our body in the summer and what we're not supposed to do. And Kelly and I are both here to say F that. This is going to be marked explicit. So if you have little young ears, do not be listening today to this episode. You'll want to listen on your own, but let me dive right in. I'm going to talk about this post that I made, and it happened, I want to say, gosh, it was probably 15 years, maybe not quite, but somewhere in that neighborhood. I had lost over 100 pounds. I went through my divorce. I had a big health crisis, and I really did want to reconnect with my body in a way that did feel better to me. Now we can talk on another episode about how I went about that because there were definitely some things that I would do differently knowing what I know now. However, it was interesting around people who hadn't seen me in a long time because I had lost a significant amount of weight in a short amount of time. Less than a year, I lost 100 pounds, and I did it just through diet and exercise. There was a lot of speculation about what I did and all that. Everybody wants to know, what did you do? And what have you. Anyway, I was out to dinner with a friend who I hadn't seen in a while, and her husband hadn't seen me since before I lost the weight. And he, like, the first thing out of his mouth to me was, "You're never going to keep it off." And it was said with a mean, cruel intent. And what I shared in my post the other day is that it was like a knife right to my heart. And I realized a couple things. First of all, if somebody says something to us and we really don't believe it to be true, I probably could have come back with some really great comment back. When somebody says something that we fear, right? When we get shamed about something and it's a fear of ours or something we're worried about, at least this was true for me because I had lost weight, gained weight. Like my whole life had been this game of losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight. And so here I was in this space. And my biggest fear was absolutely that I'm not going to be able to keep it off. And I remember as the years went on and I did gain some weight back, that I had him in my head, right? This like, you're a loser. See, you couldn't do it. And all of this negative, just these negative voices and beliefs there. And um, I had to do a lot of like come to your dark moment with myself about this because I realized, number one, I've been programmed to believe that thin is better or being this, right? So if I gained weight, somehow it was bad and it was a personal reflection of me and my body and this failure that I couldn't do it. But that wasn't really, well, I shouldn't say really, that wasn't my belief. That was the world's beliefs. That was everybody around us has been dipped in these systems of what bodies should and shouldn't be and what they should do and all of that. And it took me a while, a couple of years after he said that, to really realize, number one, first of all, nobody should ever be talking about anybody's body, number one. And that led to some things that I'll talk about. Number two, Kelly and I want to talk about how much pain this person was in to project, right, his own feelings onto me about his body. It feels personal, even though it really isn't personal. And I just realized, like, I don't want to live in the world where this is how I treat and am in relationship with my body. So this is a big topic because I think everybody on the planet, in some regard, has felt body shame or shame around their body. So we wanted to talk about it, not to solve all the problems in the world today, but how it relates to enchantment is when you're in this, you are absolutely disconnected from this feeling of kind of body enchantment. We're feeling like we're trying to morph or be something, and it really takes us out of joy and the beauty of messiness of life in terms of being who we are, and not having to demand our bodies to be something in order to be loved and approved of and worthy and all that bullshit. There we go. I'm just laying out the words today. All right, Kel, I know you're probably like, you want to say so many things.
Well,
So
yeah,
tell me
of
what you're
course.
thinking.
Of course. Well, a couple of things, but I don't want to delve too much into it. But we do know that the person that said that to you is a bully, and they're in a lot of pain. Because in order to be that cruel to somebody, you have to be in a lot of pain yourself. We teach this to our kids, right? About bullies, like the amount of pain that that person has to be in order to say something like that, and they probably have their own set of fears and stuff surrounding body and all of that stuff. So we know that, and we know that to be
Yeah.
true. So that's helpful. That's helpful, but it's
Well, you can have
also,
compassion, right? There's
yeah, like, but
it
it's
doesn't.
helpful to know that it's not about you, it's about
Yeah.
them in terms of that, them saying something. But you said something interesting too. You said that people, you don't have a right to say anything about people's bodies, but I find it interesting because it's everybody is saying everything about people's bodies. I mean, think about the Kardashians. Think about how popular all of the on social media, that's like a constant. It's
Yes.
always talking about someone's body or somebody's or
Yeah.
what they're doing for their body or what
Yeah.
diet they're doing or what procedure they've had or what
Absolutely.
so it's I feel like it's almost like a war on us, men and
Mhm.
women, in terms of, like you said, like, what are we supposed to be doing? And that's always evolving and changing, which I find it so interesting. Like you could never follow it, right? So it's always this low fat, then low carb, then this, then this, then this. So it's all these things, and it's always coming at you, coming at you, coming at you
Yeah.
constantly, whether it's TV or social media or your friend's new diet or whatever that is, or your spouse's new diet or something like that. So there's a lot coming at us, and trying to navigate that in a world where body image is so front and center. I think I think it can be done, and I think it can be done with I guess the word that you would use is maybe just like a lot of compassion for yourself and a lot
Mhm.
of coming back in. I think
Mhm.
it's helpful with meditation and having your own sort of spiritual practice or whatever that looks like to you. I think that's the only way that you can keep coming back to yourself and your inner knowing of what you're supposed to be doing, in terms of this idea. I don't even personally believe that doctors know what your weight is supposed to be. I
Mhm.
think that we're using an outdated system. And I think most doctors have like a couple nutrition classes and that's it, unless they specialize in that. So it's a tricky subject to kind of go into. But my point is that like only you know is only you know what's best for you, and what's best for you may not be best. Your how you move your body and how you eat and how you are in the world is not going to be the same as your friends. It's not going to be the same as your spouse. It's not going to be the same as anybody else's, and you can find peace in that, and it's the only way. Really, the body image stuff is we're our worst critic, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. I'm talking about all this body image stuff that's out there, but
Mhm.
the worst critic is the one it's ourselves, to ourselves,
Yes.
right? But
Well,
there
do you think that it got I mean, I think we created this inner critic because, again, all of this programming and messaging out
Mhm.
was like, "You're not enough. You're not lovable. You're not okay," right? Like, fill in all of the big things that we as humans are kind of navigating on the planet. This whole body image topic and theme, it goes right to the heart of it. It goes right to the heart of you're not enough. See, you gained 10
Yeah.
pounds. See, you shouldn't be wearing sleeveless. See, fill in all the things. One of the things I would say, and tell me what you think about this. I want to talk about this for the listeners and for myself. course, always for me. Boundaries, right? So I know if that person or a person, because this has happened to me since then, I have family members who make comments on my body or who did make comments on my body all the time. That was the first thing that people would say out of their mouths.
Mhm.
Oh, you gained weight or you lost weight, and then that was, a judgment of how you were, according to them, and there was, like, this body scan. If you've followed me for a while, it was, like, up and down. It was the worst thing on the planet. So I think that we come by the inner critic honestly, because that's trying to protect us from getting what we need as humans on the planet. But what I've also found in terms of the boundary piece of it, to me, is, like, I told the one person several times, it's not okay for you to comment on my body anymore. I know that you've set this up in the past, but I'm no longer here for this. And every time you do this, it's not going to be okay. And I'm going to call you out on
Yeah.
it. Uncomfortable,
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And yet now the person doesn't do that. And it feels, again, whether they have it going on in their own head, to your point, is about whatever they've got in their own
Yeah.
head. But how do we start in these, like, to your point, this is a big thing, these little pieces. I agree with you. A practice where you can come back into your own body every day. Because, hey, guess what? This is the thing that is walking us on this planet. And being mean to it, because we've all done that, doesn't work.
Well, I find it, I mean, it
Why?
doesn't work. None of that stuff works.
No.
I mean, the diet industry is a billion-dollar industry, and we have a
Yeah.
lot of people that are
Yeah.
still are
Perpetuating
still
that.
are still feeling uncomfortable with themselves. So
Mhm.
it's an interesting thing, but I think if you can look at your food and body as, like, I like to say this, I like to say, like, looking at it as like a scientific experiment. Like,
Mm.
what is it that why can't we take it day to day? Why can't I ask myself, "Oh, what do I want for lunch? And what sounds good to me? And what will give me a lot of energy? And what will, and make me," you know what I mean? So people, when I say that to them, they'll push up against it and they'll say, "Well, if I did whatever I wanted, I would eat, 3 large pizzas." The truth of the matter is that you might for a day, and
Yeah,
then you'd be really freaking sick,
yeah,
right? Like, we have this
yeah.
idea that we have this idea that we would eat like it's Thanksgiving every
Yeah,
season, but we
it's
wouldn't.
fear and
We wouldn't
manipulation
do that.
again.
It's just a trust issue, but
Yeah.
you learn that over time by keep coming back. And this is something that people do, and it it's when I like so like you and I are in our 40s, they'll say something like, "Well, when I was 20, I did this diet and this is what worked for me."
Um,
Well, first of all, you're not 20. Second of all, it didn't work for you because here you are. And
right.
third, I mean, come on. And third, or worked for you, whatever that means. And then another thing is we're always evolving and changing. Like what I did last year may not work for me today. What I
Mhm.
did last week may not feel good to me today.
Yes.
Our bodies, our digestive systems, our hormones, everything is always evolving and changing. So we have to keep coming back inside of ourselves and asking what best works for us in this moment.
Yeah.
And that's kind of with everything, like when you're making difficult decisions, but when you're talking about food and body and all that stuff. And when you start to get in the habit of doing that, then you can start setting up boundaries with other people because
Yeah.
you're setting up that boundary with yourself. You're being kind and compassionate to yourself so that when someone comes up at you with some kind of comment or some kind of judgment, you can instantly say, "Oh, no, that's not gonna work for me," because you're not doing it to yourself. So you're no
Yeah.
longer going to allow it with anyone else either.
That's
So
the
when
that
you
Kelly,
yeah,
that is the point, I think, of gonna be of this whole episode. When you aren't doing it to yourself, you do not allow it from other people in a
mhm,
way that just, again, just like a mother would, if somebody were bullying their child, you'd just be like, "No, this isn't
yeah,
happening." You step into that role for yourself, which I really, really wanna stress, if nothing else. And so how do people, like, what would you say to me if I were being so super mean to myself? Where would you have me start? What would you suggest I begin to
well,
do
just
today?
we'll take I mean, I hate saying this because it sounds like well, it kind of sounds like it's like cliche a little bit, but like it is really one day at a time. And then it
Absolutely.
becomes and sometimes 1 minute at a time. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's like so sometimes you're just a witness. You're just getting curious, right? You're just getting
Mhm.
curious about your food. You're just getting curious about your body. Like I said, it's a scientific experiment. You're trying new things. And then but you're doing that with like it's not that the things aren't going to come. So
Right.
it's not that I look in the mirror and everything is, oh, I'm perfect, I'm beautiful. Oh, look at
Mhm.
me today. No, 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 no. We're with ourselves all the time. So there's going to be those things that arise and
Mhm.
things that have been programmed for years and years and years. So, but when they come, I always say to myself, I'm willing to see this differently. That's it.
Oh.
I'm willing. So in the beginning, it's
There you
just like,
go. There I'm telling you. I'm willing to see this differently is how you crack out of just
Mhm.
being in that day in and day out, self-shaming, right? As the world has taught us to do. And I think you're
I
also
don't want people to get more mad at themselves, Stace,
no.
because the thoughts didn't disappear. Because let's
Agreed.
be
And I
honest,
think a lot of people promise that,
they think
"Oh,
they
you can
oh,
just
yeah,
love
like we should
yourself."
be telling them, like, "Oh, you can get to a point where you'll never have a bad thought about your
Absolutely.
body, or you'll never feel bad, or you'll never want." There's
No,
nothing
not
wrong
true.
listen, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be at a healthy weight. There's nothing wrong with wanting to look nice. There's nothing wrong with wanting to feel nice.
Yep.
Stop all that. Of course there is. However, um, it's you can do the only way to it really where you because you and I both know this because we've both been there. We can be 85 pounds and still hate ourselves. So
Absolutely.
it has nothing to do with what the scale says or what a measurement thing says. If you don't get right with yourself for real
Mhm.
inside, nothing is going to, it doesn't matter anyway. So
No.
if you can, I always, how I have started, how I used to start was when the thought would come, and sometimes all I did, nothing really changed. My at first, it was just, I'm willing to see this differently.
Willing to
I'm
see. I
willing to
love
do
that.
this differently. And then with that willingness, listen, the universe responds to the littlest amount of you
Oh,
opening.
yeah, it loves a crack. The enchantment can just swim
Yeah.
right through those little cracks.
Instantly, the universe will respond to your willingness. So
Yes.
just a little like well, like, and I mean, this sounds stupid because this is kind of like a
No.
religious thing, but like in the Bible, it says all you need is a mustard seed of faith.
Yep.
Well, in our world, all you need is just a little willingness, and then the universe wants everything for you, so it will conspire for the greatest good. It wants
Mhm.
what best for you. I mean, what's that saying? What would you do if you knew you were always being guided? So
Oh,
it's not that the thoughts aren't going to come. It's that can we just start out with the simple thing of I'm willing to see this differently. I'm willing to do this differently.
yeah.
And with that, books fall off the shelves. People like you come into their lives. People
Yes.
like me come into their lives.
Yes.
They might meet somebody on the street that says, "Hey, you should go to core boot camps. You should go to like you."
Mhm.
It's in there, and you'll be like, "Oh my gosh!" Like it's just with
Mhm.
the slightest willingness, the universe will open up to you. I really believe that.
Yes, and you know what is interesting to me, kind of like again, how I would wrap this from my perspective is you're right, because most people think, how do I just stop this from happening? And then when it doesn't, then it just spirals down and you're more frustrated than you were at at the beginning on the onset of trying to do something different. I love the idea of experiment because when we start talking about experiments, scientists are neutral. Well, they should be neutral, right? They shouldn't have this attachment. They might have a theory, but they don't have an attachment. Everything, as I would always say, is information.
Mhm.
So when you eat a certain thing or you put on, like, how do you feel? Like, really just taking in the information, because what we've done, and it's so interesting because we could talk about this for hours about when somebody steps on the scale. Now, I've been shamed my whole life. So I had doctors when I was like 8, 9 years old shaming me stepping on the scale. You weigh too much, you're this, you're that, blah, 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 blah,
Mhm.
blah. And so, again, the scale for me was the like, like, it was the thing that I was having a good day if I liked the numbers, having a bad day if I didn't, and again, the body shaming just became bigger and bigger depending on whatever I made that mean.
Mhm.
So if you're willing to then, whether you're gonna get on a scale or whatever you're gonna do, say, "Okay, I'm willing to look at this information from a more neutral place," right? I'm recognizing what's programming, because again, if it feels like shit, it ain't true.
Right.
It's a manipulation and fear, so we'll spend money, gazillion dollars,
Yeah.
to get, what, to your point, whatever the latest thing, and then we'll get the whole community of the world shaming each other, so we all buy into this, and it's like,
Mhm.
it reminds me, as everybody knows, one of my favorite movies is The Matrix. It's like The Matrix could just be about bodies and food, right? Wake up and say, like, take the blue pill or the red pill or whichever one is the one that's like, am I willing to look at this? It doesn't mean we're not going to ever have a thought come through, but can we then take a pause? I would add that, please. Can we take a pause and go, of course, this is coming up. This is, we are inundated in the world around this. This is a money-making scheme, and it's interesting because I've done a lot. I'm certified in this kind of coaching method around helping women particularly renegotiate the relationship with their bodies, and one of the things that came out of that when I was getting trained is like, I think I think women, I don't know about men, spend like 45 years of their life on a diet. They spend
Mhm.
all this time and energy being right, beating themselves up, trying to figure out what the fix is, like, we're problems, like, this body
Well,
is
I
something
find
we
it
can
interesting, don't
fix.
you, that people will fight their hunger. Like, hunger has become bad.
Mhm.
Like, "Oh, that stops me from
Mhm.
being hungry." Why don't
Yeah,
you wanna be hungry?
yeah,
Hunger is what keeps you alive. Hunger
absolutely.
is what keeps you alive. Hunger
Yeah,
is a beautiful thing. It is what keeps us alive, it's what gives us energy. Why are we fighting this idea of hunger? I
yeah,
wanna be hungry. It's what
yes,
keeps me going. And so
yes.
that's like saying to your car, "Why do you run out of gas?" I mean, that's a ridiculous it's
Mm,
a ridiculous thought, but it's talked about all the time. Another
yeah.
thing I find it interesting is
Well,
when
'cause things are good or bad, right? Hunger's well, and if you wanna go down that path, read Glennon Doyle's Untamed, because she does spend a lot of time on hunger, and I think she's spot on with that. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. I think that it's also like, sometimes I think when we're struggling with issues with food and body, it's just the universe's way of like tapping us on the shoulder. And
Mhm.
at least for me, when my issues with food and body really start to surface and come up for me, it's just a tap from the universe saying, "What's really going on?"
Mm.
And oftentimes there's something else that's going on. So
Yeah.
oftentimes I'm trying to avoid a situation or control a
Mhm.
situation, like, or maybe something feels out of control. So I'm trying to control my food, or
Yeah,
like there's a lot of things, and we could go on to that, and that would be a really long discussion. However, I think it's important to mention because I
it is.
think that oftentimes I think that we can get a lot of information from our relationship with food and body, but you have to coming back, and I think it's important. That's why I believe in meditation or
Mhm.
sitting and journaling or doing something where you come back in and you're in a space of like peace and quiet where your own intuition can come out and talk to you, because then you'll have the inner knowing, like, and it's not a judgment. Even if you're in the middle of a binge, like you're eating like a whole chocolate cake or something, I honestly believe that people should say to themselves, "I'm willing to do this differently."
Oh,
That sounds ridiculous, but I really actually believe that they should say that to themselves. And I think that because
I love this,
you
Kel.
are
I think this is amazing.
you are willing to do it differently. And here's the thing,
Mhm.
it's just information and it's just us being curious and like, "Oh my gosh, because what happens is you're like, "Oh my gosh," like every day at 3 o'clock, I
Mhm.
eat 2 chocolate bars and I sit down and I watch that show. Sometimes it's just a habit.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just like "Oh my gosh, I wasn't even aware that I was creating that." And then I was like,
Mhm.
"Well, what happens every day at 3 o'clock? Like, why did I choose that?" Oh, I know. Because I was trying to starve myself all day because I was on that real strict diet and I
Mhm.
was really hungry. So then I went or
Yeah.
every day at 2 o'clock, I've been talking to my boss in a meeting and then I feel
Mhm.
really stressed out. So then I eat that. Like there's always
Mhm.
information in food.
I
Food
I
gives us a
couldn't
lot.
agree I couldn't agree more, and I think when you again, when you're willing to create that pause for yourself, when you're willing, again, to come back into your own knowing through some type of practice, whether it's meditation or going for a walk, just being in your own, then you can see the world with a different perspective and lens. It's like being in it versus being kind of out and just going, "Oh, of course, that's what's happening," and that then you get choice. There's freedom and peace there because what do I choose? What's going to feel good for me? And I think you're right. It goes back to when you then are willing to see it differently, then you're willing to negotiate events like what happened to me and have happened to me, not just that one, over the years where people have done that. And I think it can get even more complicated when it's happening right in your household because I know for me, when I was losing that weight years ago,
Yep.
I was married to somebody who would sit down and eat like a whole half gallon of ice cream. And it was like all of these things. I mean, I've been around people who binge eat, and it's like they become mirrors for me again of my own, like, what do I believe? Why is this bothering me? Why is, how am I feeling? Because again, when I'm trying to control or tell other people what to do, or they're trying to tell me what to do, to your point, what's underneath that? Right? That's the path to enchantment. What's underneath all of these things? And I find when I feel out of control in other places in my life, I go right to trying
Right.
to control my food and exercise.
Mhm.
It's like now I know that is just a marker for me. It's not good or bad. It's just a marker. I'm like, something's going on for me. What is it?
Yeah,
And
it's just the universe tapping. It's
yeah,
the
I
universe
love that
tapping.
because it's not, "Hey, you suck, you loser," right? Because
No.
that's what we interpret it as. It's like,
Well, like,
I love
I wanna step in really quickly, just
yeah,
it shouldn't I'll be
do
short
it,
about this,
do
but
it.
if you're living in a household or you're in a relationship
Mhm,
with that doesn't feel good to you in terms of this of, like, maybe they're on a diet and you don't wanna be, or they're
mhm,
talking to you about your body, there has to be really clear boundaries that are set, and I believe if it's, like, not your spouse or it's not somebody that, like, you have to be interact with all the time, it may be good to just cut that I mean, that's not a
mhm,
healthy relationship, that's a
mhm,
toxic one. I'm
mhm.
being serious, that's
I
a very
agree.
toxic thing, and it's about them, it's not about you, but we need to keep we there has to be a sit down, some communication, "Hey, very clear, this isn't okay with me. Please
Yeah,
don't talk about I don't wanna discuss diet or my
mhm,
body anymore. And
mhm.
if you decide to do that, I'm going to leave the room or I'm going to go somewhere else. And if it keeps happening, then there's probably going to be something else that happens. I don't know if we'll be able to be friends, or I don't know, if it's like a spouse, then maybe we need to go see a therapist about this. Like, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
when you set
absolutely.
a boundary
We
with
have
somebody
to.
and they keep crossing it,
Yes.
then something else is going on. But I think it's important, and I think it's totally, not only is it okay, but it's honestly the best thing you can do is just set very clear boundaries around my body is not something that we're discussing, and what I put in and what I eat and what my size is and what my weight is none of your concern, and we aren't discussing that.
It's funny, that reminds me of what I said in this original post that sparked this whole c which we could talk about. We realized, Kelly and I both realized,
Yeah.
like, this we're going into some places. This is a longer conversation. This is why you're gonna be on the show all the time. But one of the things that really brought me peace around, like, gaining the weight, I know this is gonna sound a little, I don't know, maybe not everybody will agree with me, but I came to this question, like, "So what?" Well, and I actually said, "So the F what?" But, like, okay, so you gain weight, your body gained weight. Well, like, what's the big deal? It's information, and it's like, again, if you take out this kind of lens of we're making it mean I'm a good person, I'm a bad person, like, all of these entanglements that are deep, deep, deep roots into kind of the human experience. But if you can ask yourself, like, that was my willing to be look at it differently.
Mhm.
That question was like, "Okay, so what?" And it was like, Okay. I don't answer to him, nor do I answer to anybody else. And for me, I also realize, and this was my other how do I see this differently? I am not a problem. My thoughts, my body, my relationships with things are not problems. We so are trained also to, and again, what can I take? What can I do? What can I, consume or buy in order to fix this?
Right.
And that to me, when I was willing to see things differently, I was willing to then realize, ah, and I'll tell you what, again, I don't have a perfect relationship with anything. I don't think that's the point here.
No.
It's messy. However, if you want more peace in your life, freedom of like really feeling free to honor what is true for you, that's the way. And you're seeing it differently might not be mine, but that to me, Kel, that starts it. And then you start to then ask yourself, okay, then what is true for me? And all sorts of magic kind of comes through
Yeah.
when you're in that space.
Yeah.
And I think that that is like, again, not that I wish that that situation happened to me, but I absolutely like it broke me open
Yeah.
in a lot of ways around what I was still believing about my weight and my body and my relationship, about how I was allowing people, like to your point, I needed it to be to curate a different environment for myself. I needed that to be different in order for me to again feel more supported in this world rather than taken down at every turn, which was kind of
Well, and then
wasn't kind of how I experienced.
setting yourself up for success, means unfollowing people on social media
Yes.
that are body shaming and
Yes.
that are obsessed with the body,
Do
and
it.
I don't even care if it's in a good way. I think
Nope.
that people in the beginning of this journey, if they're someone who's, like, weighing themselves constantly and
Mhm.
they're really in the flux of this diet
Yeah,
mentality and this body hatred, you should be unfollowing almost anybody that has anything to do with that, quite
I
honestly.
agree.
And then I have some suggestions and I can, we can always like post that somewhere to
Ooh, let's
post it.
post that in the
You
Facebook
can
group.
follow,
Yes,
healthy people that you can follow, more of a like an
love it.
intuitive guidance, on things like that. And then there's another we can, when we post this, we'll post all those things
Yeah,
underneath in the
and we'll
post.
put in the show notes too, so
Yeah,
people
yeah, yeah.
can find it.
And so you're not only setting up boundaries with the people in your life, but you're just kind of setting up some things that the people that you're following and the do's and the don'ts. And
Mhm.
that'll just kind of help you navigate it in a different way. Um, yeah, I think that's important.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it, and again, like we're trying to do, stay in the 30-minute mark. This is a big topic, but I wanna keep talking about it. I wanna keep giving ideas, and I think, again, if we all take one thing out of this, it's that taking that pause and asking ourselves Kelly's question, and then allowing ourselves to hear whatever that is, and then you're right, this environment, the boundaries come as we I don't know, renegotiate, whatever with ourselves. Those are the pieces. Maybe that's not the first thing you do, but you'll find that it will be easier to be braver to do those things as well. And that to me, enchantment's all about feeling more delight in life and ease and fun. If you're worried about all of this all the time, you're taking yourself 5 steps away always from ease and fun. So
Yep.
this will hopefully bring you back to that path. And I'm realizing I didn't introduce you
Oh,
when
that's okay.
we started.
Whatever. It'll be in the notes.
We will totally put it in the show notes. But for those of you who are closing here with us, Kelly is the most amazing, badass entrepreneur. She owns 2 fitness studios, core boot camps, and a core bar and yoga. So if you are local to the Bel Air, Harford County, Maryland area, you got to come check out her offerings. And she's also a personal trainer, and you do that all over the place because now with Zoom and the way the world is. So
Yeah.
if you're loving what Kelly is offering, you're a great trainer, and also I don't want to coach, if you're struggling with some of this stuff, reach out to somebody who again has the beliefs and philosophies, doesn't have a simple fix. I think the simple fix is like the flag that, hey, There is none. So find somebody you feel safe and comfortable with to really explore some of these things, because life is it's too long and too short to be consumed. We've been taught to be consumed by this, and taught to be, again, these mean parts of us to ourselves. Like, let's just ditch this shit, one little baby step at a time. So that's what Kelly and I are here on the planet doing and talking about. And if you have questions, again, pop over to Everyday Enchantment, the Facebook group, because I love to offer any ideas and thoughts and more on this topic. Until then, we will come at you later, and I hope that you enjoyed the episode. And again, drop us a line or a comment and let us know what you're thinking.
Thank you.
That's it for now, loves. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Get all the juicy details and links we've mentioned in the show notes. If learning more about how you can use your own enchantment to live a oh hell yes life, come get your own coaching session with me by going to staceyandon.com and signing up for my homepage. And as always, come chat with me about this topic and all things enchantment in my Facebook group, Everyday Enchantment. See you on the flip side.